Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night, good something. Someone told me the other day that I should look intelligent when I do these things, so I thought I'd whack on these glasses and see if it makes it look good. Yeah, no, don't fucking work. Don't work for me. Hey, welcome. Thanks for coming in, tuning into the show number 15 today. And we're hoping to get through some little things. I've got a few little things to have a little chat about, but not a lot. I'm going to again, just remember always at the beginning, if you get potentially getting offended or you don't like what stuff, then just move on, go somewhere else. And obviously always give me a thumbs up at the beginning. Helps me, makes me feel good because all insecure, because that's where we're leading into today. These wonderful feelings that we all have and wonder where the hell they come from. And also I'd like to preempt an apology to the potential of bad video from my side. And I'll always use the excuse, and it is a real one, that we have shocking internet where we live, right here in this location. There's a satellite or a tower that way and a tower that way and a tower this way, and we are in the middle of the three of those. So there's a little spot right there, and that's where we are. And some days it's really good. Hopefully on a Saturday morning, that the kids aren't on there playing their live games just yet because they're still asleep from their last night's jaunts. So hoping we're going to have some decent reception. I've got a bit of a light up the back there, so hopefully that's going to make the vision look a little better. If it doesn't work, then not much I can do about it. Anywho, so first thing, I just had a visitor last night come over, had a few sherbet, had beers, and went to the toilet. And I went in that room today, and believe it or not, the toilet seat was up, and it reminded me of something. Laziness of man, maybe, don't know. But my mum, when we were really young, I remember her coming out one morning and ripping us, like my brother and my father and myself, like not my sister, because obviously girl. She went out to the toilet in the middle of the night and sat on the toilet seat, and it was wet because one of the three of us obviously went to the toilet and peed and didn't put the seat down, blah, blah. And we were told we were forced to put the seat down all the time. Of course, my brother and my father didn't do it because, they're men's men. But I decided to, I sort of thought about it, and I go, if we put the seat down to make it comfortable for the lady, which I think is fair and reasonable, we have to lift it to go to the toilet and we have to put it down. So we've got two tasks to do, and the girl technically has none. So I figured when I was young that let's just make it fair and reasonable for everybody. So I put the seat and the lid down. So every time I went to the toilet, I put them both down. And as I got older, I started to realize, well, that made a lot of sense. There's nothing worse than going into a toilet and looking into a toilet bowl. Someone doesn't clean it. There's a bit of a on the end there, and there's paper in there. So just close the bloody lid, close the seat. Men and women, don't be fucking lazy. Just do the job. Toilet seats are done. It's over. Toilet paper. That's another thing. Toilet paper, whether it be from the back or from the front, how about when you use it, pull it down so there's a bit of paper hanging off, because, trying to find that rolls around in the middle of the night, gives me the shits. Anyhow, so there's my little rant on toilet paper and toilet seats. Let's just do that, guys. Put them both down. It stops the smell as well. Right, so today I'm going to have a little talk about journalism and feelings. Right, so before I go into feelings, because they're really intense, I'm only going into journalism and, for my mind, the difference between journalism and reporting. So just a little history on my understanding of journalism. My dad was an investigative journalist, and I'll explain that in a minute, what I believe that to be. So he was in the army. He was in the Air Force in World War II, became a journalist after World War II and worked for the Courier Mail in Brisbane, Queensland, and then was recruited by the Army to become a public relations officer. Good morning, everyone on Rumble and YouTube. Thank you for tuning in. So anyway, he was a journalist for the public relations office in the Army, and he went to Vietnam for 3 tours. And in those tours, his job was to put all the information out there from what was happening from the live front and out for the world media or Australian media to see it. And that's when he started to become a little twisted and torn in what the media was, because his job was to give everyone the news. So he'd go out and he'd report on the events that were happening in Vietnam. And he then his job became a investigative journalist, which is a reporter and journalist. So, all right, so just go down the breakdown from what he told me from in the early days. A reporter used to go out and investigate an event or a story, and then come back, compile the information, and give it to the journalist. The journalist would then write that information and put it into a story form. And that story form was going to be for the target market, right? So to go out to wherever it needed to go. Then it would go to the editor. The editor would then read the story and compile the story based on everything that was suited to the newspaper that it was in, whether it was the newspaper values, whether it was going to suit the advertising people or the government at the time, and importantly, the owner of the newspaper, whether it sort of blended with what he wanted to say. So Dad often told me that from a reporter's point of view, reporting the story, the journalist would filter it out a little bit to make it a little bit safer and better. The editor would completely botch it out, and not botch it up. There's no disrespect to an editor because it's a horrible job. The story would then get changed in 3 different levels, and it never came out the way it was originally investigated. So, and Dad said to me in the 70s after Vietnam, that whatever you read in the newspapers, and this was long before the media the way we see it now, the way you read in the newspapers was about 1/3 of the reality of the story, because the journalist put a slight bias on it, and the journalist was trying to appeal to a certain demographic he was writing to, and then the editor would go and change it again to suit it towards the advertiser, the government, and the person who owned the business. So it was never really a true story. Now it's gone to the point where it's not just that, it's is it going to affect a small minority of people? So the story that may come out from, I don't even know if there's any investigative journalists anymore. I don't even know if that's real. I think there may be some. But anyway, it's sort of a story comes in, a reporter will go and look at the story. In that reporting stage, we'll go, well, I can't really say A, B, C now because that'll offend X, Y, Z. And so, well, we'll just say someone went to court today. And then you make up whatever you want to make up from it. But it's still all wrapped around how the story is going to affect or offend someone. So the journalism stage at the moment is like, I just don't know that there's a journalist. The journalism is out there. Now, those journalists, if you ever get to see this, because I'd like you to give me some feedback on it. Nowadays, all of that process, so the reporter might go out and still investigate and give it to a journalist to write the story, to go to an editor who's going to change the story to suit the demographic that's going to suit everybody. Nowadays, it then goes to a presenter. Oh, these presenters, hey, I watched something on The View. Not that I watch The View, it was one of those things that fed in through, feeds everywhere. And God, those guys are just opinionated. I don't even know what you call them. I don't know if there's a word to describe what those people are. Unbelievably biased, unbelievably one-sided, and they influence so many people. Journalism now, I think, or reporting now, or the news today is social media, and the social media drive of someone like me putting up my opinion in the world. Not that I have major influences yet, but maybe. I like to think that journalism, if we can get rid of social media as a news port and give it back to a reporter / journalist, and then into a journalist, into an editor, and then we actually going to start to get a wide range of news. Dad's side, when he was doing his reporting, would report on both sides of the story and come from both sides of the story. And even in his stories, when I would read them, he would say, like John would say this and Mary would say that, and they're opposing stories. So we did some investigating. We come up with a difference between the two, and this is what we found. And the journalist would bring that into a concise way, and then obviously the rest of the thing is what happened. I don't know that happens anymore. I don't know that it's a reality. I heard somewhere over the week that, I don't know how true it is, and please let me know if you think that it's true or it is true or it's been talked about, that Donald Trump running for president in 2024 in the United States was rumoured to say he was going to select Robert Kennedy Jr. to be his running partner as the vice president. And I go, fuck, what a good idea. You've got a potentially Republican leader of the government and a Democrat vice president at the very top of the governmental chain, running from both different views with the one goal of making America a great country again, without using MAGA. Anyway, you know what I mean. So Kennedy wants the best for the country. Trump wants the best for the country. Surely those two can run together and run the country from both sides of the political spectrum to make the country great. I think that's a great idea. I don't know if it's true, but when I saw it, I thought that just, wow, that was just, I thought that's fantastic. I think if everybody was to, if all government parties ran that way, where the leader of one has to pick a leader or a representative from the opposite to be in the top echelon of that party, then you're getting both sides at the top of the ruling regime. Still have open elections and change it around the next day or the next 4 years. Yeah, I'm not so sure in 4 years either, because if it's the same in America as it is here in Australia, one party gets in after 4 to 6 years and they spend the next 2 or 3 years blaming the other party for the stuff-ups, and it's going to take another 5 years to fix that. And so nothing really gets done other than blame and accuse the others of being incompetent, which I think is a failure in the political system. And it relates back to how the journalists work, and politicians nowadays are worried about the journalists, so the journalists so they don't say what they think they should say because it may offend someone. Like, and as Jordan Peterson says, to have a conversation, you risk offending someone. So let's have a conversation, guys, and let's not be offended, right? And which I guess is pretty much moving me now into what I'm really getting onto, and this about offending and feelings and emotions and things like that. So for those of you who've got comments in there, and I know there's comments that are coming through, and I think it's really great that people are putting some stuff on. I appreciate that. But the thing about feelings for me, and I've been told by exes in the past that I don't have any feelings. And I argue that right down to that I feel as deeply as anybody, like as anybody in the world. I just don't emote it as much as other people do. So in saying that, I want to go so mankind, mankind. I can't say mankind, so let's say personkind. Can't say person because that's got sun in it. But people, sort of as we know it, have been around this planet for somewhere between 200 and 300,000 years. Yeah, so let's say 250,000 years. I don't know how true that is. Archaeologists will argue this way and that way, and there could be less, could be more. So let's say 250,000 years as Homo sapiens. Can't say homo. Gay sapien. Fuck, people. For a long time. Right? And most of the time, the people were in survival mode, and they were working through hunting and gathering and being warm or anything like that. So they were walking through this time for a long time. So as far as we know it, now there's lots of ideas out there that there's timelines of 10, 12,000 years before the last ice age, technologies and structures and buildings, and there was intelligent life long before the 6,500 years ago, where the Sumerians were the oldest known culture to our existence in the Western world today. So the rumors, let's say 6,500 years from the Sumerians of what we understand it to be today in culture. So 6,500 years is probably, given 250,000 years of people being around, that's about 3% of the time. So the last 6,500 years, 3% of, yep, long time. I believe that for most of those 6,500 years until the Industrial Revolution, what was that, 400 years ago, when we had a little bit more time on our hands and we could sit and think and ponder our belly buttons, we were just in survival. We were just in survival mode. We were working hard. We were wondering whether we were going to get food from one day to the next, and whether there was going to be a war or whether the Lord was going to take our food, not the Lord as in the God Lord, but our king, queen, whatever, was going to take our food from us, and whether we were going to starve or not. So most of our feelings were around about survival, and then the other side of that was when we weren't in the survival mode, we were just in contentment because I've got food, I got my family. I don't know that there was the romantic side of it you see in the movies now of, the love that they say they had those days. I think they were just more in this. I'll use the word love because it's, to me, it encompasses a lot of things. But I say they were two feelings, and only two, love and fear. Or you could say contentment and survival. Either one of those work in my realm, the way I operate. And from those things, everything else comes. Like from those two emotions, those two feelings, they're all the emotions. They all come from there. So, and I say that because if you're in a happy relationship and you're in a really good space in your world, all you have to do is you feel content. I'm content. I feel loved. I'm loved by my wife. I love my wife. I love my life. I feel content. If I'm not content, then I'm anxious or I'm worried, which is all just an emotion on fear. If you're worried, you're afraid something's going to happen. If you're anxious, you're afraid this might occur or that might occur. If I'm angry, then I'm afraid something's going to lose control. So I'm in fear. I'm fearful. I don't get angry if I'm in a love state. I get angry if I'm in fear. I get disappointed if I'm in a fear-based. For me, now, of course, psychologists out there will question that, and I believe all of these emotions that we are now working on that weren't there before the Industrial Revolution, because we were just in survival and or contentment mode, came when we had time on our hands and a philosopher. And you'll say the Greek people, they understood the body-mind idea, but they didn't. Not very many of them talked about anxiety and fear. They talked about, I think, survival or contentment. And after the Industrial Revolution, all these people came in and they had time on their hands, so they started labeling these things that we have of anxiety, of love and contentment, to the fear and all the other things that came with it. So put it down into context. I'm not so sure that before the Industrial Revolution and before psychology or psychiatry became a big thing in the last 250 years, and particularly the end of the 20th century and really, really rolling into the 21st century, from love, the positive emotions from love, you'd look at happiness, even the word love from the contentment side, gratitude that comes on that love side, excitement and serenity. They're just five, right? And you sort of think about picking five from the other side, and there's obviously, I mentioned before, there's anger and there's sadness and sadness and fear and anxiety and disgust, and you can run that into depression and all of that sort of stuff. So they're all fear-based emotions, and happiness and love and joy and contentment and gratitude and serenity, they're all loved-based emotions. So we can label it in any way we want. But for me, an experience and an event or a thing is objective. It's an objective truth. So I use this as an example. Sorry for those who use Fahrenheit, because I'm not sure. Maybe 32 degrees. No, that's too cold. I'll use Celsius because, hey, I'm in Australia. So for me, 20 degrees Celsius is objectively 20 degrees Celsius. That's it. It's 20 degrees. I feel 20 degrees. That's it. Now, let's say I come from the Antarctic or a really, really cold climate. It's cold all the time. Arctic, the North Pole, South Pole. 20 degrees puts me into a state of, wow, this is really nice. I feel content. I feel warm. I feel I'm okay. I'm not struggling. I'm not trying to survive in the cold. So 20 degrees to me feels awesome. I feel happy. I feel love and gratitude for the temperature. Someone who comes from, the middle of the bloody desert, who's working on 50 degrees all the time, comes to 20-degree temperature, and it is objectively only 20 degrees, and goes, my God, this is so unusual to me. I don't know. My body's feeling something. I'm cold, and I'm feeling anxious because I don't know if I can survive this. And the fact is, guys, it's just 20 degrees. So what our mind does, and our head takes that experience, that objective truth of 20 degrees, and puts it into a state of survival or contentment or fear and love. It's either way, whatever word you put to it, I still think it's a binary of the two different things. Then the person who comes from Antarctica goes, wow, it feels good. Actually, now I'm getting used to it. Now I'm getting used to it. It's still objectively 20 degrees. Then they start using their mind game to go, well, maybe I should get a jumper ready just in case it gets cold later. And the man or the woman who comes from the middle of the desert starts to acclimatize to it and get used to it. It is still just 20 degrees. And then their mind changes, and then maybe it all flips and it goes all over the shop, and their emotions start to go everywhere. I believe that the psychologists out there, and apologies if you're a genuine, anyway, whatever, psychologist who understands the power of the mind, who realizes that it is just an objective truth, it's 20 degrees, and just look at it as being 20 degrees and don't emote it at all. You just have an understanding that it's 20 degrees, then it's 20 degrees, and it's neither good nor bad. It is just 20 degrees. And you can take that into an experience, right? So, I don't know, when I was 25, no, I was younger than that. The first wife, I don't like using the word my first wife because that's like ownership. And I don't own that. I don't want to go down that side. The first wife, no ownership there at all. Before we got married, she fell pregnant, and she had an abortion against my wishes, but knowing that she was going to have to carry it, and she didn't want to carry it. It was like, I know how a child feels inside of the body when if the mother doesn't want it, it feels that and knows, and it comes into an unwanted feeling. And I don't think that was good for the child. So at 23, I said, I don't agree with it. I think you should have it. I think you should embrace it and have joy with it. But if you don't want that, then you do it. And I think about that now, that child would be 40. So do I go, oh, God, I could have had a child. It'd be 40 now. My life would be so different. I could be I am a grandfather. Oh, whatever. At that time, I went, I'm going to make a distinct choice here. I'm going to go with what she did for herself. I'm not going to wear it. I took the side of contentment over the side of survival. Not going to have a child. Fearful of life. Will I ever have another one? Wasn't going to entertain it. I didn't go into the emotion of the loss of my child. I went into as an event. What do? It's an event. I had it. It's there. I'm going to go with the contentment rather than the survival mode. And I've got a beautiful daughter now. Got a beautiful wife. All of that's real. And it all leads to that process. Now, if I went down the side of darkness into despair and anxiety and fear and loss into the survival mode, then I would have gone down the spiral of who knows what could have happened with that. So for an individual, you can choose which side of that you go, whether it's be contentment or survival, and don't get into the emotion of that experience. Either way, and you'll find, for me, that your life will go better. I don't know that the people out there in the professional world want to say things like that because they want people to identify pinpoint that event in their past that made them this way they are today, which could go anywhere. Like it could open up a gamut of things. Something happened in my past. It was an event. It occurred. That is objective truth. Now, how I determine that event from 50 years ago or 20 years ago, for God's sake, 5 weeks ago to 5 days ago, is determined on my memory of that event. And that event's memory changes all over the time. So I don't know for truth at all that I can objectively say truly that what happened when I was 21 was real, because I've made it something more, because I've got into the emotion of that event. Right? If you don't get into the emotion at the beginning of the event, you just recognize it as an event, then you don't have a distorted, clouded memory of that event. You just know that an event happened. At 23, the wife the missus at the time had an abortion. That's the event. That's it. There's no memory attached to it. I know that there's an event, and that was it. I don't know how I felt. I don't know where I went with it, because I chose not to go anywhere with it. I just recognized it as an event. And that might sound callous, and it does to a lot of people, I'll tell you right now, but it isn't. I felt deeply at the time. I just chose not to take it anywhere. Right? So, and that can happen with anything, whether it's a temperature vary, 20 degrees, it's 20 degrees, beautiful. It's 5 degrees, beautiful. You just take it where you want it to go. Don't go into survival. Just stay in that place of the event was the event, and choose which path you take. So the whole idea of, for me, working on the emotions of it, I've tried psychologists, right? I've been to them. I think maybe I go because I'm a shit stirrer. I think. I'm not 100% sure. I actually believed that I went for a genuine reason, like I'm having a problem with the ex, or I'm having a problem with the workplace, or whatever it might be. And when I realized that I actually wasn't having a problem with it, I bought into the hype and the drive of getting in touch with your feelings, getting in touch with the emotion, becoming more sensitive, becoming vulnerable to the world out there, and becoming a sensitive new age guy, becoming a snag, and almost every single time I tried to do that and was pressured into becoming a snag, something came up and I wanted to become vulnerable, and the ex at the time thought, oh, isn't that nice? And then all they did is that triggered them, and they just went into their vulnerability. So I stopped. Can't have two vulnerable people having a conversation. It doesn't work. One person's vulnerable, other person has to be stoic and solid, so that the person can bounce off and get ideas to be strong and able to cope. If there's two vulnerable people, it turns to shit. It goes crap. It's everywhere. So one's got to be the counteracting balance of the other one to allow vulnerability to exist. And in my experience, with all of the exes, not the current, because it's not an ex, it's a real one, allows me to be vulnerable, which is really cool, because then not often is there a time where I can't be vulnerable, because she'll take on the role of being the stoic person that allow me to be vulnerable, which I think is really, really cool. Now, all the exes, they just went into vulnerability, and I'm going, this is just bullshit, right? Why would I want to be in a state of vulnerability when it's just turmoil? So I maintain a neutral space. If we look down the highway of life as we travel, it's a highway of life, guys. You're on the highway. You walk the path. You have to rest at some point to get fuel and food and water and whatever. And it depends on which side of the highway you're looking to determine which way you'll go off the exit. This side of the highway is rainbows, it's beautiful, it's clear, it's sunny. This side's a bit dark and miserable and lightning and thunderstorms. But you don't choose that. The event occurs, oh, need fuel, I'm looking that way, you turn off that way. And that's dark and horrible. Okay? So it's dark and horrible. And you stay there for the moment. And you go, got fuel, got food, I'm on, back on the highway. The next stop, you're looking this way, and you go up to where it's light and beautiful. You go, wow, this is fantastic. Cool, nice. Back on the highway, travel forward. Looking at both the dark and the light side, because you have to look everywhere. If you go onto the darker side, and it's lightning and thunder, you look at that and you say, wow, this is dark. And you keep looking there and staying there, and all of a sudden you're there, and you keep going darker into it, then yes, you're all over the shop. You can't go anywhere. And to get back onto the path, you can't, if you're lucky, you can maybe go back on further up, but generally you come back to the same point you entered, and then you go back on your highway. So by all means, look to the left and to the right. Look to those paths. Look to the joy and look to the sadness. But don't stay in either of them for too long. There's an example of the people who win lotto. Got no money, win lotto, stay in the joy, stay in the happiness. Got money, broke. Almost all of them. Because they've gone and spent it all. They've stayed in this state of wealth and affluence and joy and happiness, and it doesn't work for them. So they've had to come back to where they started at break mode to get back on the highway to go forward. Way it works. That's on that side. Anyway, so for my mind, those who feel the need to walk on the left and the right side, do so, but maintain a middle status as often as you possibly can. So that's where I go with the feeling versus emotion. And I know I work with the mindset of feeling, emotion, and mood. Mood is what emotions create. A feeling is what is you perceive an event. So let's go event, feeling, which is 2, goes to the multitudes on either side, which creates a mood depending on how they work. So I know it might be worked around the other way in some psychological mindset. Crocodile Dundee quoted it, and I don't know word for word. I'm paraphrasing it because it just jumped into my head just then. Those of you who haven't seen it, see it. When he went to America for the first time with his reporter journalist friend, and all these people are saying about, what about your counselor, your therapist, who do you see? And he goes, like, what the hell's a therapist, they said, that's someone you go to talk about all your problems. And he just says, what, don't you have mates? And that's it. Like, clearly that's it. You've got friends. You've got a problem, like you've got one problem that seems to be overloading you. Speak to 5 of your friends and give them a fifth of that problem. Don't load one person with your whole problem, because that's a burden on them. Load your 5 friends or 3 friends, genuine friends, with a bit of that problem, and they will give you a help and help you through that. Even if they sit with you in that bit of the problem until you go, don't want to be here anymore, and you go out of it. You go to a therapist and they'll go, that was really good. How do you feel? Where are you going with that? Next week, we'll see if we can work through that better. You go, yeah, next week I'll go back and let go of your $150. And they sit there and they go, how'd you go from last week? And they spend half an hour going through that. And then it's just fair income. It's a conversation with a complete stranger. Your friends are there to help you through all of your problems. They're there to be with you on that when you're content. They'll sit with you in your contentment. They'll guide you and they'll enjoy your contentment. They'll sit with you in your survival, your fear mode, and they'll allow you to express a little bit of that. And I put emphasis on a little bit. Please do not dump all of your stuff on one friend, because they won't stay. It's too hard for one person to deal with all of that stuff. Pick 4, pick 3, pick 2, whatever. Give them both a little bit or all a little bit, and you find that you've offloaded. You feel content. Your friends feel content because they've helped you through a little bit of your fear or your survival mode, and they've guided you down that path. You've worked helping your friends to help you through, and everybody benefits. It's a win-win. For my world, I'm in service, even when I am in fear, and even when I am in the state of love or survival and contentment. In survival, I'm still in a survival mode. I'm still in service. I want to help my friends help me through my situation. So I'm in service to my friends, even in a survival or a fear mode. And as we know, one person's fear is another person's excitement. Hey, roller coaster rides, I love them. I know people who are terrified of them. It's just a bloody roller coaster ride, guys. My excitement's their fear. Objectively, it's a roller coaster ride. Take it wherever you want to go. Anywho, I'm done. That's it. I've had a talk. I've enjoyed myself. Hope we've had fun. I got some comments there. I can't do 2 things at once, even though I like to believe I'm multitasked and multi-talented. I look here, I can't look there to look at the quotes, but let's have a look. Yeah, that's good. Daffodil rainbows nowadays have a negative feeling about them. Yes, we do. Don't go there. That's a talk for another day, Daff. I tell you what, so true with those things. One flag. Yeah, the Australian flag, the American flag, the Dutch flag. Who cares? Just one bloody flag. None of the other shit that's out there. Don't start me. I'm not going there. Hey, on another note, I watched a YouTube video from a lady who is a clinical psychologist, or a psychologist, not a clinical psychologist, a psychologist of 30 years. And she's maybe helped me down this path a little bit more to bring this into my head. I've been saying this stuff for many, many, many years, and about this love and fear thing, and feelings and emotions, feelings versus emotions, and how I feel deeply. I just don't emote very much. And this lady helped me as well as Jordan Peterson did. So that with these people out there, it's actually telling me in my mind that I am living a truth that's not just mine. It's actually a lot of people's truth. So anyway, Jordan Peterson, if you haven't look. This lady, I've got it. I put in the link in the description. Marissa Peer. Now that's MRISAPEER.com is her website, and she's on YouTube. I don't know if she's on Rumble. She will tell you that you don't need years and years and years to sort your mind out. You can do it like that. And it is about the choices you make. And if you're going to watch something that's going to give you some information and knowledge about self and understanding and awareness, Marissa Peer, check the description below. She's bloody sensational. And not that I'm going to be now watching everything what she says, but I'll be looking at her shorts and some of the things that come through, and looking at some of the videos. So on that note, I'm going to sign off for the night, the day, the evening, afternoon, and wish you all a great weekend. And to remind you to, let's see if I can do this, bring this up because I don't have it. Oh, there you go. Treos, take responsibility and own your shit. Even though I've got a Facebook and a Instagram, yeah, I don't go on them very much, so I might take them off. But anyway, I will be starting. I've learned how to do Instagram shorts where you can put words on it. Really cool. I might try and do that over the next coming weeks. Maybe do a live next week, but I won't be in this seat. I may be somewhere else, so we'll see how that goes. But anyway, enjoy your journey. Take responsibility. Be good to everybody, and I want you to have a look at this as I sign off. Have a good weekend, guys. Enjoy.